Huawei Mate 20, Mate 20 Pro and Mate 20X. It's a triple header. Let's put these phones to the test. Let's compare the cameras, screens, design, and best features of these three really great Huawei phones. Make sure you watch till the end, as we're going to put all of the stats and all of the best features of these phones together and see which one comes out on top. We're going to get to the cameras in a second. When I was testing all three of these phones, I was so impressed with all the cameras, but there are some differences between them. Before that, we're going to get right into the screens. So let's have a look at the Mate 20. This has some of the smallest bezels on any Android phone that I've seen. You get that awesome little teardrop or water drop notch in the top for that front-facing camera. Side bezels are virtually non-existent. It's actually an LCD screen. 6.5 inches, full HD display. One of the best LCD screens you're gonna see on any phone, honestly. When I was using it, when I had it in my hands, I was so impressed by the colors, by the clarity. I was really impressed until I had the Mate 20 Pro in my hands. This thing is an absolute beast. I loved looking at this display. It's an AMOLED display and you get those beautiful curved edges on the side. Whether curved edges are for you or not is your decision. What do you think about this? Have a look at those edges. I really like it. It just curves off at the sides, much like the Samsung design. It's a 2K AMOLED screen. The colors on this are so poppy, so vibrant. You get those really deep blacks. I was so impressed with this screen. 6.5 inch screen also, but the phone design is completely different to the Mate 20. Because you get those curved edges, the actual footprint of the phone, the size of the phone is completely different. The phone feels in the hand so much thinner and longer than the Mate 20, even though you get the same 6.5 inch screen. The Mate 20 feels big. It feels flat and wide and big in your hand. Whereas the Mate 20 Pro, it feels thin, it feels long as well. What one here do you think comes out on top? Do you like that curved display, or do you prefer the flat display of the Mate 20? One thing the Mate 20 Pro has that I really love is that red power button. It looks so good. Even on the pink versions that they had in the shop that I saw, that red power button it just looks super great. It's a really great design. Let's get on to the Mate 20X's screen. This is a huge, humongous 7.2 inch display. This is also an AMOLED. It's a full HD display, although the PPI is slightly lower than the Mate 20 Pro. This is a huge phone. It's absolutely massive. You can see it in my hands here. You can't really use it one-handed. It's a two-handed phone. It also has that stylus pen, which is a great advantage for this phone that the others don't have. But if you're looking for a phone you can put in your pocket and you can actually use one-handed, then you might want to go for the Mate 20 Pro. One thing I was really shocked about with that pen is that the tip was a lot harder than I thought. It was actually like putting metal on the glass of the screen. I thought it would have been maybe quite soft or rubbery, but you actually get like quite a hard sound when you touch the glass. It's quite brittle and stiff. Notches on these three phones are also completely different. As I said before, the Mate 20 has that teardrop or the water drop notch. The Mate 20 Pro, for some reason, has a much bigger notch, much more like the iPhone. The Mate X returns to the water drop notch like on the Mate 20. What do you guys think about the notches here? I personally prefer the water drop. I just think it takes up less screen real estate. It looks a bit nicer. Let me know which one you prefer. Would you have liked to seen a smaller water drop notch on the Mate 20 Pro. Enough about the screens, let's get on to the main event, the cameras in these phones. Incredible cameras in all of these. I was really impressed by the wide angle cameras on these phones. It's a really great feature to have a wide angle lens on your phone. All three of these phones had super bright, super sharp images, and I loved zooming in on those big screens to see just how sharp all the images were. The cameras are different across all three of the phones. So the Mate 20 has a triple camera setup. You get a 12 megapixel wide angle lens, 16 megapixel ultra wide angle, and an 8 megapixel telephoto lens. The telephoto does have optical image stabilization. The other two lenses do not. Absolutely amazing camera, this one. I love that wide angle lens. The pictures are super sharp. Really great camera. I can't say too much bad about it. The Mate 20 Pro steps it up a gear. You get a 40 megapixel wide angle lens. You get a 20 megapixel ultra wide angle lens. This thing was absolutely amazing. I absolutely love that ultra wide angle shot. You can get so much in the picture. If you're shooting outside, if you like shooting landscapes, this is such a great feature. On top of that, you get the 8 megapixel telephoto lens. That also has optical image stabilization. The other two lenses do not. Of course, the Mate 20X, being the biggest phone, isn't gonna skimp on the camera hardware. It's got the same camera hardware as the Mate 20 Pro. Just look how good those images look on that huge screen of the Mate 20X. Moving on to the front camera, the Mate 20 and the Mate 20X both have the same 24 megapixel selfie camera. The Mate 20 Pro, in addition to the same 24 megapixel selfie camera, you also get the 3D sensing technology. They use this for their version of Face ID. So now we know why the Mate 20 Pro has that slightly bigger notch at the top. The specs sheet may say that the Mate 20 Pro has the best hardware, and it does, but when you get these in the hand, when you're using them day to day, I don't think you're going to see too much difference between them. I wish that they had optical image stabilization on more of the lenses, but they keep it just for that 8 megapixel telephoto. Alright, so we need to watch on because there are some other really important details that you'll need to know about these three phones before buying. They all feature the same chipset, the Kirin 980 from Huawei. Specs are exactly the same across all three phones, but the RAM across them is different. So the Mate 20 comes with 4 or 6 gigs of RAM. You get card support for 256 gigs. The Mate 20 Pro gets 6 or 8 gigabytes. You can also put an SD card in there as well. Mate X comes with a flat 6 gigs of RAM. You can't change it up or down. 4 gigabytes seems a little bit low. If you're going for the Mate Pro, obviously that starts at 6. You may just want to shell out that little bit extra for the 8 gigabyte version. All three cameras across these take video at 4K 2160p 30 frames per second, 1080p obviously, and they all do the same slow-mo. Connectivity, batteries and charging all have differences. They all have USB-C. The Mate 20 Pro is the only one of these phones to have wireless charging. Headphone jacks on the Mate 20 and the Mate 20X, not on the Mate 20 Pro. The Mate 20 Pro has a fingerprint sensor under the screen. You get an optical image sensor under the screen for fingerprints, and you also get their version of Face ID. The Mate 20 and the Mate 20X both have fingerprint sensors on the back. They all have a version of fast charging, and of course the Mate 20 Pro has that feature of reverse charging. That is, you can charge other devices on top of the Mate 20 Pro. A cool feature, it sounds like, although we've seen in some tests that in reality the charging is just unbelievably slow. So what do you guys think about the Mate 20 Pro? It has wireless charging, under screen fingerprint sensor, Face ID, but they get rid of the headphone jack. In terms of battery capacity on all of these, unsurprisingly, the biggest phone of the lot gets the biggest battery, 5,000 milliamp hours for the Mate 20X. What is your favorite phone of those three? Well, the Mate 20X is certainly not going to be a lot of people's choices just because it is so big. The Mate 20 Pro has better specs, has better features than the Mate 20. Three amazing, great phones, and I would be ecstatic to have any one of them.